So I've been making quite a bit of progress with my little One ROM here on the Pet. So what I wanted to have a look at was the bootloader system, which is using this ROM bus control protocol. And what this allows you to do is it allows the One ROM to effectively communicate back into the ROM image that it's supplying. And I've been using codecs to give me a hand here because I'm really bumbling my way through. But what we end up with is a JSON file, which is what we're going to use to flash the One ROM. And this contains all of the elements, including these two USB systems plugin and host control user plugin. And I think these are the two bits that are required for that communication. And then what I've added in for this is slot 0. We've got a new ROM which I've made, which is the pet menu ROM, which I'll show you in a minute. And then in slot 1 I put the normal original edit ROM that this machine uses. In slot 2 I put the version of Pettester that I've made some edits to, and then I've split out the IE test and the ROM CRC checker so that they can be sort of more useful for both tests, and each one of those is its own ROM as well. So we've got multiple ROMs, and what we do is we boot the menu ROM up, and the menu ROM, the first thing it does is check to see if the NVRAM on the One ROM has got a recorded slot position that it should be booting from. So the menu goes away and it checks that. If it's got a slot position, then it swaps over to that one and boots it, which in the case of this setup with the ROMs only ever going to happen if you've chosen the edit ROM. So it'll always boot to the edit ROM. It won't always boot to one of the tests. If you launch one of the tests, it wipes that NVRAM slot setting, which means it carries on booting to the menu. The other thing which it does is it checks for a key press, any key, when the machine's booting, and if it's got a key press, it ignores the NVRAM check and carries on booting the through to the menu. So as far as files go, you've got your JSON, which you need to compile this all together into a single ROM. Then we've got the original edit ROM, the IE test, there's the menu, there's the ROM ID test, and then there's the Pettester, full Pettester ROM. So what this looks like, if we power this on, let's give you a better view of the screen. And let's just power it on. So, flickery. So you might notice there was two sets of beeps that happened. One is the normal edit ROM, but before that was the sort of sweeping beep that my ROM's making. But when you've turned that on, that's booting straight into the edit ROM. Now, if I turn it off, and if I hold down the space bar here, and now if I turn it back on, we don't get that second beep. We've got the CRT warm up. It does the first two tests, and then we hit a menu, and we've got a countdown here, because if you haven't got the keyboard, this will just boot straight into the full Pettester ROM. But if we press any key, we can swap between the different tests. So that's the normal edit ROM at the top there, and if we boot that, it'll lock itself into the edit mode, and then each time you turn it on, it'll just launch the edit mode. Pettester is the full Pettester, which runs through all of the tests. The IE488 test is one of the new ones which I've added in, so we can either let the timer run out or we can hit enter, and that now boots straight into the test. So this is going to go away, and there we go. It's tested all the data lines and the endac-dav lines. It obviously only tests the ones on the pet side, so it's not testing, you know, whether it actually can communicate out to a printer, but it's just a good indication as to whether one of the three chips that sit on the IE488 line have failed, and that'll just keep looping through the test, so you can poke them and see if it makes any difference when the tests are there. So if we power it off and we power it back on now, we're no longer booting. I didn't need to hold a key down, but it's now going to boot straight back into the menu. And with the ROM CRC ID, what I've done is I've put in most of the common CRC checks for the main PET ROMs. Now we can only see what the CPU side can see, so I can't check the character ROM. But if we have a look here, we've got it running through the ROMs. So, and of course E000, which is the edit ROM, is the ROM that we're running, so there's no point in CRC checking that. So this is identified that I've got 4 other ROMs installed. I've got the kernel 4 one and the basic 4 B23C and D ROMs, which are all correct. So it CRC checks them against a basic name, because obviously we were a bit restricted with the 2K ROM size, but by splitting the individual tests out into their own 2K ROMs, we can get a little bit more space on, and there's actually a fair bit of space in that ROM, so I could add a load more chips in. There's probably about 100 bytes left on that one. Yeah, and obviously Pettester will run through the full Pettester ROM, and then if you flip it back into edit mode, it will then boot back into edit mode, and then when you turn it on again, we're in edit mode. The thing you need to be a little bit careful about is because when we're reading and writing from the Raspberry Pi into the actual ROM space, is you need to leave a memory address that you're going to use for the One ROM to replace with the data that you want it to. So in this case, which ROM we're going to boot being pulled from the NV RAM. So you have to leave that empty. If you put anything in it, the One ROM's going to overwrite it and potentially corrupt your ROM. So there you go, just leave it. That's now booted. That's now back into Commodore Basic, and flick it off by the switch and turn it on. It'll do the check. It'll boot Basic. Anyway, so I'm pretty pleased with that. That seems to work really well, and I'm going to have a little explore and see whether there's some more funky and interesting things we can do with that, like continuously replace the data in a ROM using a much bigger table stored in the One ROM to try and get away from this 2K limit on the edit ROM as well. But yeah, just for a quick play, that's excellent. So I'm going to leave it as this, very short. I'm going to post up somewhere the files that I've done if anyone else wants to have a go with one of this. I'll need to check this on my 40 column, but it is coded to work for 40 and 80 column, so it should be absolutely fine. But yeah, thanks for watching.